Movie Wars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Movie Wars podcast. I'm a child of the Force. Give me a break. I'm Kyle.
I'm Seth.
I'm Drew.
Yeah, and we are doing American Psycho. We were going to do Falling Down today, which we still plan to do, but then they announced the remake of American Psycho. It was in all my feeds. We just did a fucking reboot of my favorite movie from 1994. They will never be stopped with these reboots.
Nope.
Welcome to modern Hollywood.
It's sad. It's and I have some categories and stuff about this later, but not only am I tired of it, but I really think it's interesting that because the new director says he wants to get as close to the book as possible. That is impossible.
You're
I'm
right.
sorry,
Yeah.
and I
Maybe that's a different category of
Yes.
TV.
Are we getting an NC-17 American Psycho?
Yeah, I mean that doesn't even begin to describe it. I mean, I've only had one tweet ever go viral. I'm not very active on Twitter. I try. I'm not good at it. Yeah. But it was when I saw the announcement, I replied that if they did the book faithfully, it would make Terrifier 3 look like the Rugrats. Mm-hmm. And that's literally the only tweet I've ever had go viral because it is the book makes the Bale movie look like Rugrats. I mean, the book is everyone knows I like to read the books for this podcast, and Bret Easton Ellis is a top 3 author for me. My favorite book by him is Lunar Park. I love The Shards. I love Less Than Zero. This was the first book I read by him. Not my favorite. I don't love it. It's not even in my top 3 of his books. And I tried to reread it for this. I got through half of it, and I just couldn't do it.
Oh, wow.
I could not get through it. I like violent movies, and I've never had a problem with it. But reading that book twice felt like punishment for myself.
Yeah, no, I get that. There's certain movies that I'm like that with. Like, I will never watch Hereditary again. I've seen it twice. That was 2 times too many. It is a beautiful movie, but I just every time that one scene in the middle happens where the girl gets her head fucked off, like it just I white knuckle the couch. I have heart palpitations. Like I just have an entire panic attack. So I get it.
Yeah, sometimes things that are meant for entertainment are not entertaining.
No.
And you're like, it's the same philosophy of like why I don't eat really, really, really spicy wings. Like it's like I like a little bit of spice, but I also like to enjoy my food and not burn my mouth off. Yeah. And so like sometimes it's like because that's what a lot of people were saying. Because this was my first time watching American Psycho, and whenever I watch a movie, I always post on Threads or on Facebook like, what do you guys think about the movie? Just getting people's opinions. And then I try not to read too much of it until after the movie. But the one thing that people kept saying for American Psycho was, oh, man, you have to read the book. And then as soon as they started telling me why I have to read the book, I was like, I don't think I have to read the book. I think I'm okay not reading the book.
I think you just explained everything that you would have wanted me to get out of the book. So I'm good.
I'm okay not. Like,
I will say I see them as complementary. And the reason I say that is because they could never do everything in the book ever. I still don't think they could do it today.
Can't wait for that reboot.
Go and try.
They're
but they did attempt at least to really attach themselves to the satire in the book. The things they captured were the comedy, the satire. There's not really a lot of violence in the movie when you think about it. Maybe that's just because I read the book again. I was like, oh, there's not.
I think that's what you're thinking because no, there was quite a bit. It takes it a minute.
I feel like there's some violence.
Yeah,
there's some good.
It gets hardcore at times.
Yeah. The mentality, the psychosis and the psychological elements are a lot more obvious in the book because in the book he starts inserting his psychological breaks, like the whole cat thing, like with the feed the cat stuff like that, like a quarter of the way in starts randomly in small amounts slipping in, and like the random times when he's trying to tell people like I'm in murders and executions, those things happen a lot, and it's kind of motifed in and out, and then like there's one part of the book where he's like talks about all the stupid things he did that day. Like I went to the gym. I'm summarizing. I went to get groceries, but then I found this dog at a pet store. I took it home and tortured it to death. And then I went back and had dinner with Evelyn. And it's like he's like sticking these little things in, and that's why the book is so hard. Is because like you just know that like at some point it's just gonna get unbearable.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that that's what the director's talking about when he says he wants to get closer to the book, as far as like not just upping the violence for the sake of upping the violence, but you know, like you were saying, like starting those hints a little sooner in the movie. I could, if it's like that, I could accept it a little more, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I did like how in the movie, like, I think it's because you going into it, you're watching a movie called American Psycho, so you're already there's already a hint already, but I like how it didn't take them long to start dropping hints, but at the beginning, like it was so eerily calm with just like him talking about his waking up routine and whatever, and
the bright lights.
Yeah, and you're just like, this guy's crazy.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I was telling I think Seth this before the podcast, or maybe I was telling one of you guys. I was in a really bad mood when I was watching this movie, and because I was just in a mood as I was watching, I mean, part of me is like, I mean, he's got a point.
Yeah.
He's got maybe not the best
really
follow
annoying.
through, but I'm like, but maybe, I mean, I get where he's coming. We've all worked with those guys before. Like,
yeah. And that's what's interesting about the choice is that very beginning scene, like you almost have an illusion immediately because there's this puritanical, completely white fluorescent room.
Like it's almost like it is an insane asylum.
Yeah.
Yes. Or heaven, though. Like at the same time, like this is a bastion, this is heaven, but at the same time, like you said, there's this like this psychotic cleanliness to it that's almost a sane asylum.
It's very clinical.
Yes.
Did we ever figure out what his actual job is? Like, what does he do? Like,
he does whatever Halberstram does.
Yeah.
He's he's got this big, high-paying job. Maybe unless it's all a hallucination. But like, you see him in his office all the time. You see him going out to lunch all the time.
Yeah, that was my joke. Was that he literally his job is to have dinners and lunches with people.
Yeah, like never once did I. I mean, I was like, I'm getting attorney vibes from him, but like,
so they're in finance. Like they are definitely in finance, and
so he's a finance bro. Like he's a Wall Street dude.
There's that, but what we do also know is that his dad practically owns the company. And so, to me, what it felt like was his family knows how fucked up he is because he's 27. They're trying to like put him out in normal life, but they know what's wrong with him. They know how fucked up he is, so they're trying to just keep him occupied and at bay through whatever this corporate job is, where he's not actually doing anything, but he feels like he's part of this company.
Yeah,
that would make sense.
Also, I don't know if you guys noticed, but halfway through the movie, he takes the last of his pills and then never once takes another one after that. And I think that's when the true psychosis starts taking over. I think things were kind of breaking, like you were saying in the book especially, we're kind of breaking in the beginning of it piece by piece. But it's like, I forget what was going on when he just literally chugs the last of his pills, but he does that. And then you never see him take another pill again. So I think that's when he really goes off the deep end and is actually in full psychosis mode.
Yeah.
That would make sense. I mean, of course, that's the big question for the whole movie is like what's real, what's not real, which murders happened, which murders didn't happen.
Yeah.
Originally I was thinking it was right when you see the mass murder spree after he shoots the gun and it notices the big explosion. It's like, wait, I'm not in a Fast and Furious movie. And then at that point, from there beyond, it's like all fake. But I don't know. Like I think in thinking about the movie since I've watched it, I wouldn't be surprised if all of this was just his crazy fever dream psychosis.
Yeah.
He never actually murdered a single person. And I don't like that because then I wasted all this time watching a story about just a weird guy. Like, if you have those thoughts and you're medicated, you're just an odd fellow. And that we're all a little odd to some degree.
Yeah.
But if he's actually killing someone, then that's a psychopath. And that's why we named the movie American Psycho.
Or is it psycho for psychiatric?
American psychiatric patient. I don't love that.
Yeah.
That's why American Psycho is a better title.
Yeah. And this was one of the more exhaustive, when I say like I was exhausted researching it, not just because of reading the book, but this movie, we'll get to it in the randos, but this movie went through development hell.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot to that. But also, this is a beloved film. I mean, this is one when I started because I didn't have social media before I started the podcast like 5 years ago. And one of the first things I noticed about like movie creators or whatever on TikTok is that this movie is like everywhere. People that list their top 10s, it's there. People are like making like greatest hits of Patrick Bateman. Like people. Yeah. And what's interesting about that is Mary Harron speaks to that on the commentary, and it's really interesting because she talks about how this movie, when it premiered at Sundance, people didn't respond. Like, people didn't cheer, people didn't laugh, like, they didn't think the jokes were that funny. They just didn't know what to expect. And so she talks about her husband kept joking with her after the premiere. He kept calling it American Sucko because the immediate response was not.
What a great husband thing.
I know, right?
Premiere of a movie. Gosh, are they still married? They shouldn't.
I wonder, yeah. and it didn't have great reception, but she talks about in the commentary, she's noticed like about 5 years later, like people start bringing the movie up in popular culture. It starts getting satirized on like Saturday Night Live, and people are quoting it. And then all of a sudden it has this weird rebirth.
Yeah.
And it's in the American, like kind of the zeitgeist all of a sudden. And she says all of a sudden it became this beloved popular movie, but for 5 years we pretty much thought it was a failure.
Well, I think people tend to forget, especially like early 2000s, end of the 90s, that was the true boom of coming out in VHS and eventually DVD, and that's where movies really got their second life. They weren't really expected to make hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars in the theaters like they do today, because they knew that after you got, 20, 50, 100 million, that was like a big deal. Then you would probably triple that in DVD sales or in VHS sales. On top of that, I have a very strong feeling that somehow it just ended up in a bunch of Blockbusters and Hollywood Videos and your local video rental places. And that's really when it started coming back into pop culture, was because people were seeing it physically in the store. And they're like, I'll spend $2 to watch this random movie. Because Christian Bale by 2005 had gotten popular because of Batman Begins.
He was a relative nobody here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was really strange because when I think of him, I think of Batman.
Yeah.
And then watching him in this, I was like, what if this was the prequel to Batman? What if this was the that's the thing that made this movie so good, was like, it was weird. There's not many like movies like it. It was an original plot line, and you didn't know how to feel at the end. And so that's what it's like someone handing you a food from a different country, and they're like, I don't even know how to explain this, but just try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and it is crazy that this is how we meet Christian Bale, right?
Yeah.
He was a kid actor.
Yeah.
He had done a few things, and he showed up. Mary Harron describes him as a skinny British guy, and says you might want to work out because Patrick Bateman in the book is a workout fiend, and he came back like a month or two later, looking the way he did.
Oh,
didn't he do the workout routine listed in the book or in the script?
Yeah. So she says that some of the not just that, but she says some of the things you see him do on screen, that's what he did.
Yeah.
Because that in the book he brags about how many crunches he can do, and so Christian Bale was like, well, I need to be able to do that many crunches. And
I think people go ahead.
I was just thinking that scene when he's watching a scary movie and doing crutches, that was real. I could see him being that's something he did, because that is crazy and weird.
I think people do forget, though, Christian Bale at that point was a little bit of a household name, because, and I don't remember his entire filmography pre-2000, but he did do two pretty big movies. He was the lead in Newsies, which a lot of people forget about, but Newsies was actually a really big musical at the time. And then very quickly later, he was Laurie in Little Women with Susan Sarandon and Jennifer Connelly and Winona Ryder and Kirsten Dunst. Like, he was in some reasonably decently big movies before this, but this, I think, artistically was definitely a career-defining moment, because even though it wasn't a big role at the time for him, it showed that he was a serious artistic actor.
Yeah, I mean, he shined in this movie. I mean, this was
100%.
He killed the role.
Yeah, I hope I'm not stepping on one of your randos, but I do feel like it should be mentioned. I'm pretty sure he said that he based Patrick Bateman quite a bit off of Tom Cruise in the Oprah interview.
He did.
Yeah.
And if you watch that interview and then watch a clip of him as Patrick Bateman, it makes so much sense. He was so nuts in that interview.
What a weird thing for Tom Cruise to read on IMDb.
I know.
Yeah. Well, and this is one disappointing thing they left out from the book. There's this, and this really is where, to me, as everyone kind of has a different part of the book. They read it where they think, okay, I think this is fake. Like he's not. For me, it was there's a whole subplot in the book that he lives in the same building as Tom Cruise. In the book, and he talks to Tom Cruise, and Bateman, you get senses of this in the movie, but he's kind of a loser in his group.
Yeah,
like they always make fun of him. He's kind of the reject, and I just want to fit in. You know, it's more exacerbated in the book. And he gets in the elevator with Tom Cruise, and he's like trying to brag on a movie, and he's trying to tell him he loved Cocktail, but he calls it a different name. And the only thing Tom Cruise really says back to him, besides nodding at him, is Cocktail. It was called Cocktail. And Bateman is a complete fucking loser in the elevator. And that's one subplot that they left out. But again, in the book, it's times 1,000, like them saying, is that Ivanka Trump? Like, and all those like name things, like that's all the time. There's so many people that they misrecognize. They're not the right person. No, that's not him or that's not her.
Yeah.
And he thinks there's celebrities he's always thinks he's seeing. And
so it even more plays into the idea of, is anybody even sane in this world?
Yes.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet you. I mean, I bet you when they were making the movie, they were like, that'd be a great scene, but we can't afford Tom Cruise.
We can't pay Tom Cruise.
Yeah, well, Tom
even
Cruise,
in 2000, because Mission Impossible had just come out 3 years before that. So
he was heavily considered for the role. He was one of the people, but he never actually showed interest, but he was one of the first people they wanted. But Johnny Depp was the most interested in the role.
Okay.
He would have done good.
Sense.
I think, honestly, I think Johnny Depp would have done well. I feel like Christian Bale would have done better, or did better than maybe Tom Cruise would have done.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just because I'm just picturing what we saw from Christian Bale.
Well, I think it also would have been a little too real with Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Though, how funny would it have been if they got him to play Patrick Bateman and then hired someone else to play Tom Cruise in the elevator incident?
I know, that would be
great.
amazing.
Would that be?
That would. Oh, they should have kept that scene because it's the funniest part in the book.
Yeah.
It's the funny because it's so awkward. It's just so like you're reading it like. He's this wealthy idiot. Like he's so uncomfortable. And there's a lot of things in the movie too that speak to this idea. To me, where I've landed, like there's a lot of interpretations, but to me one of the major ways to interpret both the book and the movie that they share is that there's no substance. Like everyone is the same. Like and his psychosis is in a way him trying to lash out and differentiate himself from this pool of yuppieism.
Yeah.
And that's why he is a psycho, but also like this idea that he's mundane. When he says at the end there was no catharsis.
Yeah.
You know, it's this idea of like this confession, like oftentimes if you look at the psychological profile of people that murder and are psychos, they want to be caught because it affirms this evil thing in them, and that's their person.
It gives them some uniqueness.
Yeah.
Although, you know what? Like as I was watching the movie, especially when he was doing his murders, but like going off on his tangents about the music and the songs. I couldn't help be like, I feel like he'd be a cool hang. Like I feel like we could talk music. I feel like maybe we'd be buddies.
In the book, those are individual chapters.
Yeah.
So there are hundreds of pages of that. Not hundreds, but probably almost 100 total pages. But they decided that was a creative choice they made, is they wanted that to be the precursor to a murder. So instead of just having him talk about music like he does in the book, like literally start to end, nothing happens. He talks about when, like that was kind of where I stopped reading the second time. Was there's like 30 pages about Whitney Houston.
Oh my God.
And it's just literally, and it's about her biography, and like he analyzes every track on the Whitney Houston record. Yeah. So, but they said, how can we include this? Well, what if this is what predates a murder? So, like, if he's talking about music, you know, someone's about to die.
That makes sense.
So that was a choice they made.
Makes sense, yeah. And I thought it was good. That was it was captivating to watching him murder people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So quickly back to your point about did the murders happen? Did they not? I forgot until literally just right now, but I realized on this last watch through, which I've watched it through probably 6 or 8 times by now. What I realized on this last one is I think it's possible that all of the murders he committed were just in that notebook.
Yeah.
Every time he wrote down something in the notebook, in his brain, he was going and
yeah. Like, so maybe he saw, it's like comedians who have the other brain when you're writing a joke. Like, the real situation happened and your brain's thinking, wouldn't it be funny if, and you come up with the fictional story. Similar thing. He probably could be a great open mic comic, honestly. Like, he probably would fit right in with a lot of comedians.
Yeah.
But
I think we know quite a few. He would be like butt buddies with.
So, yeah, so it was just a notebook, which would kind of make sense, too, if, I mean, it would be, because at the end when his assistant's scrolling through his calendar and seeing the messed up stuff, it would be crazy if she was scrolling through like the notebook and seeing like the things he was writing.
Yeah.
But that would have been too, because they were really good at like, we don't want to just spell it out for the audience.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if they did, the movie would have sucked. If they told us exactly how it ended and there was no mystery to it, it would have been like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
And that was definitely a big thing at the time, was these open-ended, like even Fight Club, as definitive as it is, it's still got a lot of open-ended questions at the end of it.
Yeah.
So it kind of neatly fit into that genre.
And I think something I realized about myself during watching this movie is when I watch movies like that, at first I hate the ending.
Yeah.
So I'm like angry that the movie just made me sit through it, and that's the ending. But then as I think about it over time, I enjoy it more because it's given me something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It stays with you.
It's like a slow burn movie.
Yeah. I love that it opens with a really strong inner monologue and it exits with a really strong.
Yeah.
And what I love that they hit you really hard at the beginning.
Yeah.
With the I'm simply not there.
Yeah.
I'm an entity.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like whoa. And the fact that and really the way to interpret, I think the most popular interpretation of him peeling off the face mask is that he's revealing another mask.
Right.
Exactly.
He's not revealing his face. He's actually just peeling off a mask to show you another mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's literally just an empty force.
Doesn't he say something like that in one of his monologues? He's like, "This is just a mask" or something.
In
Like,
that monologue.
Yeah, I
that
feel like
monologue,
it.
And
Also,
I-
like, is his wife or fiance real? Like, because if she's a real person, what the heck is she doing with this weirdo?
No, I definitely think she's real. Again, that's where I'm like, everything that happened up until he took all those pills, other than the possible moments of just those quick psychotic breaks. A lot of times happen after drugs, by the way. He'll do cocaine, and then the next scene will be him killing a homeless guy.
Well, you're not supposed to mix drugs and your medication.
Yes, but
And Wall
no,
Street.
Yeah, but no, I think the job in the office is real. I think the assistant is real. I think the fiance is real. What I think could even not be real though is like Willem Dafoe's character as the detective.
Right,
Like, that could not be real.
I was starting to think like anytime it was just him and someone else in the room, it might have not been happening.
Yeah. Which, yeah, it was there were very few times where it wasn't more than just two people. Like, there was a lot of people. Now, granted, and this would just be my own, like, head theory, but I definitely think that I forget the character's name, but the guy who, like, comes onto him in the bathroom.
Yeah.
When he's, like, about to choke him, and he's like, oh, you love
it's
me.
like it's one of his friends or one of his coworkers. Yeah.
I think that happened. Like, I think he was about to lean into the intrusive thought and kill the dude. Like, that was a real moment. And then the guy thought he was hitting on him. Like, I think that was actually real.
Which would be interesting because that would make the only killing moment that's real is the one that he didn't actually kill the person. He almost did, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that too is built to show that he's not good at this.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's kind of like fumbling his way through. And part of the, like you talked about the exercising to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, part of the interpretation of that is he's practicing.
Yeah.
Like he wants to work out, like he's getting his body ready, but he's also listening because he wants to get attuned with murder.
Yeah.
And screaming, and like he wants that to be kind of like his mythos.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
BetterHelp.com. Listen, if you're identifying with this guy at all and you're listening to podcasts, there's other ways of handling your crap.
Yeah.
Not a sponsor, but if you want to.
Axes.com. Before we move on, I know this is a huge movie, so I know you know an American Psycho fan. Show us some love. It's easy to hit that share button. Send this to a friend. Christian Bale's a big deal now. You got a Christian Bale fan in your fan in your life. We love you. Please pass this on. Thank you.
And in Christian Bale, if you're listening to this podcast,
Come talk to us.
Yeah, come be
Damn.
on the podcast, man.
Gosh, he went from this to Batman.
Yeah.
To the best living interpretation of Batman. That's so
Hey,
wild.
Don't forget Reign of Fire and The Machinist in between that.
Oh, dude, The Machinist.
Have you seen Reign of Fire?
I have.
Okay, good. I doubt you've seen it.
What's
I
the other
haven't,
one?
yeah.
There's another one that didn't get
But
a
it
lot of
sounds
love. Something Fire. In the oh god, it did not get a lot of love because it was kind of a machismo. Let me.
We might edit this moment down.
No, we will. No, I feel like I have to. Sorry, I feel like I have to now. It's really good. Sorry, I usually don't do this on the pod, but now I feel stupid for not knowing it.
No, it's all good.
We're losing subscribers by the month.
I know. I'll edit it out.
I'm just picturing so many dislikes. And
Are you
some
thinking
rage
Equilibrium?
Not Equilibrium, but that movie's great.
Because Reign of Fire, Reign of Fire.
Something Furnace. Out of the
that was later,
the
but
Furnace.
yeah. Out of the Furnace.
Out
was
of the
later.
Furnace. That
Yeah,
was
yeah,
so
yeah.
good. That did not get a lot of love.
No, it didn't. It was a fantastic movie. If you want, we can re-say all of that in a way that would edit correctly.
Yeah. So, and they did Out of the Furnace later, which I love. I don't feel like that movie gets a lot of love.
It doesn't. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it definitely was a very much smaller indie movie, and I don't I could tell why it didn't have much appeal, like mass appeal, because it was definitely a very slow, like it wasn't slow necessarily in a bad way, but it was a very slow paced movie. So I get why it probably didn't get a lot of love.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it didn't get a lot of...
it's him and Casey Affleck, right? Yeah.
This is one thing I love about him, though. He is still this way, too. Like, he is not afraid to dip right back into the indie world.
Oh, God,
he
no.
can play a Nolan Batman, and then if he got an opportunity to do another
Yeah.
Machinist-like
Yeah.
movie. I love that about
Well,
him.
I mean, that was him kind of with David O. Russell in The Fighter. Like, that was him dipping his toes. Granted, David O.
was a good
Russell is
movie.
a bigger indie director, but he's still an indie movie. Like, that's not a big studio blockbuster movie.
And then again with American Hustle. He's fantastic in
That's a good
American
movie, too.
Hustle.
So good.
Yeah, he's got so much range.
Let's talk real quick about the insanity of his body changes throughout the years, because holy shit.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. He went from this movie, and I think I read he was like 180 pounds, but pretty much a pure muscle. And then he did a couple of movies, and then in 2004, I think 2004 is when he came out with The Machinist, which he got down to 119 pounds for.
Yeah.
And what he did literally was he would eat an apple and drink a cup of coffee a day,
Yeah.
and that was the only calories he was consuming for months.
Yeah.
And then literally 6 months after they wrapped filming that, he gets up to 220 to play Batman. And
Yeah.
then continues to do that for different roles, because he was in that Vietnam movie, something Dawn, I can't remember. But he got down again to like 140, 150 for that, and then bulked back up for The Dark Knight Rises, and then got fat as fuck for American Hustle. Like, just has gone to every extreme body-wise. And I think he's finally said he can't do it anymore.
Yeah, he
That
did.
has to be so unhealthy.
I mean,
like,
well-
that has to be. It's great for us as the viewers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of cool to think like, man, that's the dedication he has to his craft. But like, there's got to be nutritionists out there that are big
yeah.
Christian Bale fans that are like rolling in their
100%.
graves.
Well, like when Jared Leto gained 63-ish pounds for Chapter 27, which I need to put on the list because it's a great movie, he developed gout because of how quickly he gained the weight and the things he was eating in order to gain the weight. And
He
he's
also
still
is
to this day is
sending-
dealing with it.
He was also sending dead fish to cast members on Suicide Squad.
That's not true.
Is that not true?
No.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. He
Does
sent
it
a
will-
live rat to Margot Robbie.
Okay.
And he sent a pretend unwrapped condom to some people. as
Okay,
well.
my bad.
Yeah.
Sending a live rat to someone.
It was overblown. She kept the rat. It's her pet now.
That's so weird.
It was overblown, and it wasn't weird because he was playing the Joker. End of that.
Okay.
Gout.
I pressed a button there. I didn't know there was a button, but I pressed it. I am excited for future times of pressing that button. Not right now, but
I
there-
have
there
a
are
30
buttons.
seconds to Mars tattoo, so we'll get into that later.
Gout. The only thing I have in common with Jared Leto.
Same.
Gout, dude. Woo, we're the gout generation, baby. Oh God, I hate it. It's so bad. You know how bad it is.
I
It's
do.
so
It's
bad.
the worst pain I've ever been in. I would wager it's on par with childbirth.
Yeah.
I
Especially
legitimately
depending on
would.
what joint it's on.
Yes, or how many.
Is it
Yeah.
weird that I thought you were gonna say I would wager it's on par with watching The Crow Wicked Prey?
Yeah, it's very.
It's not, because that was significantly worse.
I named my gout Edward Furlong.
Right.
Remember, there are women who say they would like to have another kid. No one wants to rewatch Wicked Prayer.
Yep. No, not doing that again.
No.
This is the only time I haven't rewatched a movie for this podcast. I hit play. I was like, no.
Nope.
I went outside. All right, so the questions. Here we go. How optimal of a soundtrack is Huey Lewis and the News for axing your coworker? Is that?
Right.
And what would the equivalent today be like? What do you
Chapel
think?
Roan.
Oh,
What was
man.
it?
Chapel Roan,
You think-
100%. Can you imagine? H-O-T-T-G-O-G-O.
Oh my gosh.
That'd be
Try
good.
getting a reservation at Doria's now, you fucking fuck.
I love it, dude. Dorsey is amazing.
Dorcia, yeah.
What's Pharrell or Happy? The song Happy.
Oh, Pharrell.
Yeah, yeah.
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 That would be a good one.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one to murder someone too.
It is part of the genius of this movie is the backdrop, and obviously they merged those concepts from the
Yeah.
book. But that was one of the genius moves that Mary Harron made was like, let's consolidate these, and seeing that axe fall and hearing Huey Lewis in the News was
It's so good.
yeah.
It's so good. Back in the freshman year of college, I entered a contest to make a music video for 3 Days Grace, and I literally
I love that
used
band.
that scene as like our opening scene, is where like we reenacted me getting axed in the face. So no, that
Wow.
moment, especially with the Huey Lewis in the News background, like that 100% like just hits me in a place.
Which 3 Days Grace song were you gonna make a music
Misery
video for?
loves my company.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a contest, like a bunch of people. It didn't go anywhere, but I don't know. I had fun.
Yeah.
Did you watch it?
I haven't yet. Sorry, I forgot. I will. I'll watch it. I will watch it.
No,
I
you
promise.
won't.
No, I don't know. It's one of those things where I got lost in my my text. Aside from all the murder and insanity here, did this make you want to go out and spend $5,000 and get a tailored suit, or is it just me?
Right.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But I found out you don't have to do that shit.
Yeah.
I've discovered my tailor right down the road, and you can go get a $40 suit from Goodwill. Take it to a good tailor. It'll look like $1,000 suit.
Yep.
Like, goddamn. So,
Yeah.
facts, tips
And
for all you guys. But yes.
You don't even need a suit if you want to go kill someone.
It's
you can
true.
Just,
It's true.
Yeah.
You probably just should wrap
T-shirt.
yourself in plastic wrap.
Yeah, that was probably a good idea. Go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get you a clear raincoat.
That's one part in the book that is exhaustive, is like the numerous brands. Like there's just pages and pages of brands and where the shoes come from. And one of the biggest things in the book that happens, they didn't put this in the movie, but a woman like asked him if his suit is from a place it's not, and he wants to kill her instantly because she asked him if his suit was like Henry Taylor,
and it's like a cheaper brand than what he actually got.
Or like the weird things to me was like the fixation he had on the business cards and the different fonts and how, but then it got like the good ones. It got almost like erotic how he was like into it. And then the other thing was, and maybe it was just kind of to cement the fact that he was really into stature and good places, and maybe in his delusion he was like a bigger deal than he was. But like it was so weird how every time they mentioned a restaurant, they mentioned that one place, and he had such like apathy or like ugh.
Yeah, because he can't
Dorsia?
get a reservation there.
Yeah. Texarkana.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I've been to Texarkana, man. That was so funny. Like Texarkana is a shit town.
Yeah.
I got malaria there, I'm pretty sure. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, even how Jared Leto's character Paul Allen is just like, you got us in here. I could have gotten us into Dorsia. Like everyone's bragging on the one thing that he wants to be able to do.
What was the Jello chart, arugula, and like some kind of Jello lime gelato Jello or some shit. So
also, like they all just seemed like a really weird friend group. Like if you were
that's finance bros.
If you were new to the job and you went and sat with them and they were having those conversations, I'd be like, I'm gonna just go eat in my office.
I do love that where Patrick Bateman draws the line is anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
right.
He's like, I will kill a motherfucker, but hey, do not talk about Jews that way.
Yeah. And so part of that
he's a murderer, not a monster.
I think that. So there's one really interesting, and this isn't really necessarily a rando, and we're fixing to get to randos, but one of the things that when you read not only the book, but kind of read into how they directed this movie, a lot of those things that he's doing is because he is an empty vessel. He's constantly doing things. You got to really look and watch it to pick up on it. And there's another example you'll know. He's trying to mimic because he wants to lash out and not be this nothingness. He can't just be nothing. He wants to, exceed this with his psychotic acts. Him talking, because he's married to like your very typical 80s white liberal woman. She's wealthy and they're very like, there's kind of this I don't know a good word for it, but this archetype of the liberal white woman that she's wealthy, like wealthy beyond, but still has all these causes and concerns. So he's espousing this stuff constantly because he thinks that's how he's assimilating himself with the culture, because he knows he's this psychotic empty vessel. And he does this again now when next time you rewatch it, or just go to the scene when he's eating dinner with Willem Dafoe, with the PI, he's staring at him eating because he's trying to mimic how normal people eat steak. That's what he was actually doing.
Man.
He's staring at him because he's just a PI. He's not wealthy. He's not a celebrity, and so he's like Dafoe. If you watch him, Bale is staring at him, and he's like trying to like mimic it because he doesn't know how normal people eat.
That makes
because that restaurant wasn't one of the. So he's so he's constantly trying to mimic.
What a weird dude.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it kind of plays on the idea of psychopathy, however it's pronounced now, where you don't understand the general social cues emotionally or physically of life. So everything that you're doing, going through the motions, is what you have gleaned from what other people are doing. Because you don't know what's normal, because you have no baseline as like how you're supposed to feel and do things. So it does make sense.
I get that.
Yeah.
I've just got nothing in common with you.
I just
God, I would love to say that at work without murdering anyone.
Yeah,
but I would just love to be like, I got nothing in common with you. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Get out of my office. Randos. I had to cap myself because I have a rando problem.
Yeah.
So like on Taxi Driver on the old version of Movie Wars, I had like 10. They're like, you've got to shut up. We can't do a 3-hour podcast. I was like, okay, but I capped myself at 6. Here we go.
I had to do the same thing for the next episode.
Yeah. Passion project coming from Seth on the next one.
Exactly.
Oh, it's a good time.
Yeah. So
serious upgrade, am I right?
yeah, real. Hope you don't get malware.
Uh-oh.
So I'm going to try to be as succinct with the backstory, but the backstory to me is the most interesting thing about this movie, about how it got made. Originally, Stuart Gordon and Johnny Depp, there was this black and white version of this book or this movie floating around. The book was kind of seen as untouchable in a lot of ways because when the book came out, there were protests. Feminists were going into bookstores like Barnes & Noble and independent bookstores and pouring like pork blood and all over the books, and feminists were standing there in bookstores reading the book out loud. So people could hear the grotesque
Gosh, that would
nature
be
of
so
it.
annoying if you just, you finally get an hour off of work and you want to go check out your favorite book and you go in and
Or you're there to
She's
get
just-
Goodnight Moon for your kid.
Yeah.
with your kid.
And
Sorry.
so it was very faux pas. Like people wanted to make it, but they didn't know how, and they didn't know how to get the right director.
Yeah.
So then Cronenberg was attached to it, which he would have definitely brought that horror element. But he actually got in a room with Bret Easton Ellis, and he actually wanted him to help him rewrite a lot of the book, not in book form, but he wanted him to rewrite scenes. Because the thing about the book, and this is one thing I do enjoy about the book a lot more than the movie, is that it's a very unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
And it's very modern. Like it goes from first person to third person. Like it shifts its perspective a lot.
Interesting.
Because it actually, and that puts you more in this idea of there's something psychotic happening because you keep bouncing around and like where you're at in the narrative. And it's so inconsistent and so crazy. But Cronenberg wanted to add more of a narrative. And this is something Mary Harron didn't do. She really didn't do a lot to mend that lack of narrative. And Bret Easton Ellis is like, I don't want to rewrite all of this.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So then Mary Harron gets attached to it because and Guinevere Turner, the writer, because they felt like if we got strong feminist director, strong feminist writer, that would help us stave off the toxicity of the book. They can't say that it's anti-woman if we have women at the helm.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure they still did. I'm sure they had some very nasty things.
Oh, yeah.
to say
Oh,
about the
you
women.
have no
Yeah,
idea.
Oh
yeah.
It's a great thought to think they can't say it, but can they?
Oh, yeah. Well, in fact, I mean, even while they were making the movie, they ended up having to do a sound stage that they built because they were going to film it at a Toronto office. And this was filmed in Toronto. But the office building they were going to film at got protested, and they couldn't even enter the building. So they had to go plan B and build sound stages.
Wow.
So even with him at the helm, and this is the craziest part. So a lot of actors had come in. Billy Crudup was one. Obviously, we had the Johnny Depp. So Leonardo DiCaprio was coming off Titanic.
Yeah.
He was very interested, and they were very interested. The only person that wasn't interested was Mary Harron because she loved Christian Bale. Christian Bale had been in those films you mentioned, but he was still kind of he was not a leading man by any means, and he hadn't really done anything huge. And this was a $6 million budget, but the studio was still willing to pay Leonardo DiCaprio $20 million.
Wow.
And so Mary Harron believed in she was really frustrated because how are we going to get Titanic guy? His whole life is about 14-year-old girls worshiping him.
Yep.
Like that was his life at the time. And she was like, this isn't going to work. And so she left the project and said, if you ever decide you want to go with Christian Bale, let me know. And she loved Christian that much that she was willing to quit the project. Oliver Stone comes in, and they're going to have Oliver Stone direct it. But then it turns out her instinct was right. It actually came down to the fact that not only Leo's agent, but people in the industry started telling Leo, your whole life is propped up by the worship of 14-year-old girls right now. He was like, if you do this, not only is it going to betray your entire fan base, but this could be career ending.
Yeah.
Because of the book, because of all this. And so he actually ended up walking away. They invite Mary Harron back, and that's how they get Christian Bale in this film.
That's amazing. I remember watching an interview with her where she was talking, and maybe this is also Christian Bale talking about this, but like they were talking about when they were off the project and they were still working on the project together. She was still rehearsing with him. She was still going through her script with Christian, trying to help him figure out. And he literally kept going like, but we're not on the project. She's like, don't worry about it. We're just going to, it'll work out. And it's like, she knew that she was right. And she knew that that people were going to get to the point where they agreed.
She manifested it.
Yeah. womanifested it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's true. Like for something that's predominantly a woman-related thing, you don't hear about many dudes manifesting things. That's how sexism is in America. We've taken even their words.
Yeah.
And we've masculized them.
Yeah, and actually, and this is actually Christian Bale is one of my top probably 10 actors.
100%. Yeah.
And actually, the reason she was so obsessed with him taking this role, besides the fact that he didn't cost $20 million, in fact, he took one of the least amounts in the movie actually to take this role. She said that every actor, and even Leo and all the great actors that came in to read, they wanted to know his motivation. They wanted to know what's the psychology. They were trying to dissect Bateman. Bale knew from the beginning that he was an empty vessel, that he was this kind of like what he describes as this entity.
Yeah.
Bale knew that, and so he right out the bat was like, "There is nothing to dissect. There's nothing here. He's a force, and he's either psychotic or he's not real. We don't know, but there is nothing." And he gets it. Yep. There is nothing, and so that's actually why
she knew he was the perfect person for the role.
And that I think speaks to how important a good relationship between producers in a studio can be with the director, because the director has a vision for a reason. You hire a director for a reason, and it just always frustrates me when I see like Edgar Wright doing the original Ant-Man. They hired him for a reason. He has a very strong physical presence in the types of movies that he makes. The style, you watch an Edgar Wright movie, you know it's an Edgar Wright movie. And yet Disney hires him to make Ant-Man and then cripples him the whole time, and that's when he quit the project.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't hire a director who has a vision for the project and not trust the vision.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. There are times, sometimes the director's just not good, and an executive can look at it and be like, no, I can tell you this is not going to work. But when you're making a movie of this kind of artistic depth, you really have to trust the people who are coming in out of passion for it.
Yeah.
And you have to know that, like, that's part of the job of the studios and the producers to hire, like, knowing the director's version and hiring the person you want to make the kind of movie you want. But then, like you said, step away and letting them do their thing. Because then, and you can tell when you watch those movies, you can tell the movies where they're doing exactly what they want to do and what their style. And then you can tell the ones that are like, they were maybe given too much micromanagement.
Yeah. Next rando. So this was really cool. So when he's killing Paul Allen, which in the book his name's actually Paul Owen, which is crazy. So that was messing with me.
Yeah.
but and when the blood only spatters on one face, I think that was I'm trying to remember if it was accidental or not. But
it was 100% accidental.
It was accidental.
Yeah.
Okay,
they just went for it.
Yeah. And what they loved is in post when they were editing, they're like, actually, that's kind of got the Dr. Hyde or Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing going on. So they kept it because originally I think they wanted the blood to really be all over his face and stuff. Like, whoa, it's like that accidentally happened.
Yeah.
And it had that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde look. Is that right? Or is it Mr. Jekyll?
No, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Yeah. Because you could have very easily gone full gore and just shot blood everywhere. And I'm sure they had takes that was like that, where he was just drenched in blood all the way around. But yeah, like sometimes it's those accidents where you're like, that wasn't a good one, or that wasn't what I planned for. Let's do it again. And then you go back and it tends to like make the film better somehow.
I'm glad that they, in many circumstances, didn't go full gore in this movie, because like the less is more made it more eerie.
So like, much more
it just
eerie.
made it more creepy.
Because when it did get hyper violent, then it was impactful. If everything had been this awful blood gore show, then you get to those last couple of murders and you're just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But the fact that they significantly upped that ante so hard at the end there made it way more impactful to not have everything in your face the whole time.
Yeah. And the way that murder is described in the book is grotesque. Like he even goes into detail about like the sound of air escaping from his brain when he cracked his skull, and like, and then like he talks about like seeing the jaw hanging, and like it's just like that's the book. That was like minimal for the book. I mean, that's why I was like, I can't read this all the way through again. I can't do this. This was my favorite rando. As someone in filmmaking, I think you'll love this too. Willem Dafoe. So the way they coached him was that they wanted him to do 3 takes of every scene.
Okay.
They wanted him to do 1 take where he believed Bateman, everything he was saying. He thought he was innocent. He totally was just in his world. And then they did a take where he didn't know. He was kind of in between. And then they wanted a take where he thought he was guilty. Oh. And Dafoe is so expressive with his face, and like his acting is so like nonverbal. And they wanted the ability, and they did this, and when you rewatch it, you'll notice this. Like, they wanted to be able to cut between those.
Yeah.
So you're actually seeing reactions that may not have necessarily been shot chronologically, but they're like, actually, let's put a take of him being unsure here.
Yeah.
Or let's make him accusatory here. And so those takes are all like variances of that.
That makes so much more sense.
So brilliant too, because when you're watching it, like when I was watching it the first time before I even knew that, I was like, does he think he's the murderer? Does he not think? Is he just asking his question? Like, you don't know, but it makes so much sense because you're watching different versions of his expression.
Well, I think it also can be read into this is Bateman's projection of his reactions to the thing that he's saying. Because it's like, you can tell throughout all of those interactions where Patrick is like, oh no, he didn't believe that. I've got to say something else to make this more believable. And then he'll say something and Willem Dafoe will just get like, oh yeah, no problem. Like whatever. When clearly what he has said is absolutely outrageous. But it's like in his mind, this horrific, stupid little lie that he tells is what actually is like, oh no, that worked. That 100% worked.
Do we think William Dafoe was like a hallucination the whole time? Or was there actually in this storyline concrete, like a investigation and an officer coming in or a detective coming in? Because the more I think about it, I'm more inclined to believe that was part of his psychosis, was everything William Dafoe related.
Here's what my theory has been, and I don't know if it's going to change, but what my theory has been since the first few times I saw it is that potentially the only real murder was Paul Allen. And here's why I think that. Because at the very end, he goes and talks to his lawyer. And his lawyer is the one who says, oh no, I talked to Paul Allen 10 days ago. And for me, it's like, I think he killed him, called his lawyer cleaned up. And now that they're in public and everything else has been him like writing down all these murders he wants to commit and not actually doing it. Now that he's going back to his lawyer to be like, I killed Paul Allen. He's just like, no, you didn't. Like, no, I've fixed this. You didn't do that. And now this is where it also gets confusing because I don't know if the name change like has anything to do with that, because it could, that name change where he's not actually Patrick Bateman could just be that everything was Psychosis. But that's where I tend to believe that the only actual murder that was committed was against Paul Allen.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think my interpretation is like that was them putting the bow on the ambiguity because this whole movie, everyone's calling somebody else a different name.
Yeah.
Everybody looks the same. He very well have seen someone else and thought they were Paul Allen.
Yeah.
He thinks Bateman's Davis.
Well, when he says Paul Allen at the very beginning of the movie in that very first scene, it's not Jared Leto.
Yeah.
Like, it's someone totally different. So, I mean, that's where I'm like, I could be convinced otherwise, but that's always been my thinking is the one real one was Paul Allen. And that's what set off his internal psychosis, but he didn't actually follow through on any of it.
That's what makes this movie great. Is
You just don't know.
Nobody knows.
And there's not a lot of side quests. They're not taking a lot of moments to get into subtext. Like the only time that you're challenged with subtext, honestly, like in a tangible format, is when Willem Dafoe is present.
Yeah.
Outside of the investigation, you are literally just having to depend on your own mind, what you're seeing, and because the dialogue is about loafers, and it's about being engaged. It's about it's about everything but the murdering. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So you're having to like sit there and be like, but when Willem Dafoe is on, he's like the only source of like, okay, now we can maybe get to the bottom of something, but that never happens either.
You never do. Yeah.
But see, that's where I think Willem Dafoe was real, is because the one disappearance murder of Paul Allen actually happened.
Yeah. If that was a real murder, then he was definitely real.
Yeah.
Doing good police work as they should.
But again, it's just I can't with any definitiveness say that that's the way it is.
Shall we go to Dorsia?
Let's do it.
Shall we see Urgent Ceviche? Shall we? I'm trying to think of a good. Drop a chainsaw.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
The most unrealistic shit ever, but it works.
I love that. That was just to me the most his enthusiasm. Like, got her. Like, we've all been there. We've all wanted to drop a chainsaw on a person.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah, and what's funny, it's one of the most unrealistic kills ever, but it's one of the most like beloved by fans.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So ridiculous.
Yeah, and I can't remember because I didn't get through the second half of the book this time, but I don't think that one's in the book actually.
Oh,
I don't think that's actually in the book. I'm trying to remember. I read it the first time years ago, so
yeah.
Feel
free to correct us in the comments. Guys.
Correct us nicely. Nicely.
Don't be a dick.
Don't wish me cancer like the last guy. The Deftones. The Deftones.
Oh my God.
I'll cut that out because it's too inside. But dear God, were you guys copied on all those because you're collaborators? So you saw every comment.
Oh, 100%.
I need to go back and just.
Oh my
just
God.
Read. I let it just pop in, and occasionally I'll go back and read the stuff. I've been seeing what you post on the text threads, but
yeah.
I hate people.
Same.
I love the idea of just going in and intentionally saying the wrong things. Like, no, I like the DEAF tones.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah.
I love the hard of hearing tones.
I love it. Top bill cast. And so I hear I kind of had to make creative decisions here because Christian Bale was not highly paid. So, but I still put Bale as Bateman.
I mean, he was the first name on the list, so it doesn't payment doesn't matter at that point. I mean, even Jonah Hill in The Wolf of Wall Street took a significant cut in pay just so he could be in the movie.
Yeah, true. Justin Theroux as Timothy Bryce, and then Josh Lucas as Craig McDermott.
Yeah.
How do we feel about this top bill cast?
I mean, they were fantastic.
Yeah.
They took the cartooniness. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. By the way, no, hold the thought. My category is if it's yes, affirmative, it even has a watermark.
There we go.
That's positive. If it's negative, no, this confession has meant nothing. All right. Sorry.
It's all good.
I
but
love
no,
it.
I think
That's very creative.
Yeah.
I think every single one of them committed to the surrealist nature of the film. Because it wasn't ever supposed to fully feel like real life. It was supposed to, kind of like I was saying before we started, like films that were made kind of pre-2005, and some of it had to do with the fact that they had to record ADR for a lot of it. So you got a second chance at doing the acting. I feel like they were purposefully this kind of surreal acting style where it kind of felt above real life, outside of real life. So no, I think every one of them committed to the correct bit as hard as they possibly could. So what is it? Yes, it has a watermark.
Yep. It even has a watermark.
Yeah, they have a watermark.
Oh yeah.
I agree. They even have a watermark.
Pale Nimbus.
They did fantastic.
Yeah, I almost wanted to put the color of the cards as the positive. You know, like Pale Nimbus, raised lettering.
Yeah. Bone.
I go. It has a watermark too, and I love how everyone is really, like you said, committed.
Yeah.
Like this is not an easy thing to do. They're all kind of having to just act like there's nothing wrong with this world they're in.
Yeah.
And that really, honestly, in real life, for every like hyper wealthy, like not that I've been around a lot of hyper wealthy people, but just on the rare occasion that I've been around any form of wealth, you do kind of notice like, yeah, they're a little detached.
Yeah.
You know, and this is 1,000 times that.
Yeah.
But I do love how they're all having almost like they're all just talking to themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the guy, Josh Lucas, who plays McDermott, I think does a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And at the end, when he pretends to care about Reagan and all of a sudden he pretends to care about politics, like, oh, this guy, you know, it's just like, you don't care.
But see, it's funny you say pretends, because it's like in that scene, it's almost like everyone else is finally being normal because he's broken so hard that it's like the illusion he created of everyone else is finally you're seeing the real thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, it's so open-ended that he could have been pretending to give a shit, or it's like he actually gives a shit.
What if that last scene is like the most normal and real thing that happened in the whole movie? And
Yeah.
for most of it, it just hasn't been.
Yeah.
Then finally, at the end, they switch it. Like, no, this is real. He's the weird guy, and all of his people are just like, I guess we got to keep him around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's one little faux pas at the end that's supposed to be more significant too, because that sign on the door, it says this is not an exit.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be much bigger, and so apparently they didn't have time to recreate the prop, and they had to like wrap it up because they were, but the prop, it was supposed to be much more obvious because in the book, actually, Bret Easton Ellis's merch, a lot of he has T-shirts and stuff that say this is not an exit, like he had bumper sticker, like it's a big thing in the book, but that sign behind him in the book is a big deal because you realize that kind of like affirms this idea that he's not escaping this hell. But that totally adds to what you just said. Is like all of a sudden we're like, this is the most realism we're gonna get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
All good.
Sorry, did I just go off tangent? Is that what I did?
No.
Okay.
I was just reflecting. This is just a weird. This movie's a thinker. It's a
It is.
weird.
It is.
We need more of these.
All right, so yeah, we do. I know, right? And we just got done with The Crow. I know. I texted these guys before we started. I was like, I'm just so glad to not be talking about The Crow anymore. I love 94 is such an important movie to me, and then they shat on it, and now they're gonna shit on this. Stop shitting,
Please.
All right. Sorry.
shit.
Your neighbors are probably so mad at me.
I don't have neighbors right now.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to yell some more then.
Well, now that we know that.
Woo! All right, supporting cast. Really, really interesting here. Bill Sage as David Van Patten, Chloe Sevigny as Jean, Reese Witherspoon as Evelyn Williams, Samantha Mathis as Courtney Rawlinson, the mistress. Matt Ross is I got to list a lot of them because there's
there's a ton of them.
Lewis Carruthers, Jared Leto as Paul Allen, and then I'll stop with Willem Dafoe as Donald Kimball, the private detective.
Everyone was great except for Jared Leto. I think he is terrible.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I just wanted to say that because Seth has a 30-second Mars tattoo.
Yeah. I do.
And now I know the pressure point for him. But no, I'll give them a good watermark too.
Fast and Furious 10
great.
is a good movie.
See, I see what you're doing, but it still worked a little. I got my skin raised a little bit. But,
That's amazing.
But no, I mean all the cast, top bill and bottom bill, which I don't think is what they call them, nor should they. Nobody should
Lead and supporting.
That was part of what made this movie so well. Is everyone acted well and did well
Yeah.
at what they were doing.
I mean, same with the top build cast. Everyone committed to the bit. Like, I've seen Reese Witherspoon in plenty of other movies, and she does. I don't know if like the one I like to compare her to, because I think it is one of her best acting jobs, was Big Little Lies. You compare her from this and Big Little Lies, there's a little bit of crossover because of the type of character that she's playing, but she definitely in Big Little Lies plays more to the realism. Well, in this, you feel the still surrealism of the way that she's delivering her lines. So ultimately, and to me, when an entire cast does so well, I think it speaks highly of the director, which I know we're going to talk about in a second. But yeah, 100%, it's got a watermark.
Yeah, I go. It even has a watermark here too. I got two performances to call out. First of all, Chloe Sevigny as Jean. She's
watch that be this episode's Deftones.
Yeah, did I say it wrong? What is it?
I don't even know. I do not know how to pronounce her name. So watch like 80 people just be like, it's Sevigny.
Chloe Sevigny.
You guys are correct. Everyone else is wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Chloe Sevigny. She was fantastic as Jean, okay? The Deftones. I loved how she played like the normal person. She's the only normal person in this movie. And she's so like, she's not even picking up on all the dual meaning of Bateman's when he's saying I don't want to hurt you. She's like, I don't want to get bruised, and she's so innocent. And I love that she's the one that discovers the Notebook. Because she really does play just a great like kind of middle of the road normal person. And then Dafoe. I mean, I almost don't even consider him a mainstream actor at this point, because he honestly shines so much in movies, low budget independent movies.
Oh yeah, because he's an artist. He's an actual. He does this for the art. He literally. Like, I think right after that went and filmed Spider-Man. Again, same with Christian Bale. He can go and do the big blockbuster and freaking murder. But then he'll just go and be in a random movie as Vincent Van Gogh that nobody watched. Like, no, he's true to the craft, a true, genuine, artistic actor. So, no, 100%.
And I mean, so good. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen either of them in a movie where I didn't think they were good.
The Lighthouse. He boggled my mind.
Incredible.
He scrambled my brains in The Lighthouse, and then the Antichrist, which I don't like the movie, but
I will not watch that movie.
Don't watch it. I don't. Nobody watched that.
Is that the sequel to The Wicked Prayer?
Yeah, exactly. Wicked.
The child that actually did show up.
Yes. Oh my God, it's a Von Trier film, and it's sour.
The Von Trier film I did love him in was actually Nymphomaniac. I thought his role in that was he just absolutely crushed it. So
I got a lot of problems with Von Trier most of the time.
Oh, I love Von Trier. Antichrist is the one movie of his I will not watch. But all the others I have no problem with. I've absolutely enjoyed what he's done.
Never again. All right.
Next week we're gonna be reviewing the end.
I will not be. I think I'm feeling sick.
You will be by yourself.
I'm feeling. There's one scene in particular that you're not going to
exactly what scene you're talking about.
You're not going to want to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. And the fact that I finished that movie is unbelievable to me. All right, it's 2-0. We've got a watermark here, so we have writing here. So get into some of our more traditional categories. And just to mention, Bret Easton Ellis wrote the novel. Then Mary Harron and Guinevere Turner wrote the screenplay.
Yeah. So as someone who hasn't read the book, I can only speak to the script in the movie. And I will say, and I'm sure it's because it's this way in the book, but if I was only going to judge it as a film script, I do think the humor was lost on me and most people the first time they saw it. I didn't know it was supposed to be a comedy until I watched the behind the scenes of it months after I first saw the movie back in college. So I had absolutely no clue it was a comedy, and I was just sitting there horrified, freaking 18-year-old homeschooled Christian Seth watching this movie.
Yeah.
I was just horrified the whole time, and I was like, what is going on? And then I watched it, and she was like, oh no, it's a very surrealist comedy. And I went back and watched it again, and that's when I understood it was a comedy. So I think the comedic aspect of it probably could have been a little better, but that's really my only complaint with it. So yeah, I think it has a watermark.
I think it speaks highly to it that they took the book and they were able to change it in such ways to make it work as a movie, and they put so much intentional effort to do that. And it is so different than the book, but in a way that works to make it a movie. Like if they were to do maybe they're going to figure it out when they do the reboot, but if they were to do the book word for word or as close as possible, it's going to be a terrible movie or a really good movie for like a very small segment of people. And I think the comedy, I can kind of see what you're saying, but I also think the overall, like the comedy is meant to help get you through the crazy weird plot.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
So did I laugh the whole time watching the movie? No. But like it did what comedy does, which is lighten the mood so that we can get into more messed up stuff. Like it's like that. So I don't know. I'll give it a watermark as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot about when it came out that affirms what both of you are saying, because when it came out, it was almost marketed as a slasher film.
Yeah.
And so, like horror, and if you're like a slasher, gorehound horror person, and you show up and see that,
it's not going to tickle that itch.
Yeah.
If I ever ask someone what their favorite comedy is and they say American Psycho, I'd be like, I just met the American Psycho.
Yeah,
Right?
it's funny, man. It's really funny, and that's why I actually give it the watermark, because I think they took the comedy is in the book as well, but it's much more pressed in between so much just brutality. They took those moments, and a lot of them are cut and paste from the book. A lot of the dialogue, it's straight from the book, and the way were able to cut that out and paste it here, but actually make it flow and make it a comedy, really impressive. I think you can adapt this work in its entirety, and I think they did the next best thing, which is focus on the satire,
Right,
and make it a black comedy, and I think they do that really well. So I also give it a huge credit. Like I said, this isn't even my favorite Ellis book, so I think they revived it in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
because it's very difficult to read for the normal person.
Yeah.
So 3-0. We are doing well here with the watermark here, as in our yes affirmative. Directing, Mary Harron, and it's worth noting the reason she got this job was because they loved what she did with a movie called I Shot Andy Warhol. So that deals a little bit with psychosis and a psycho trying to kill Andy Warhol, and they thought we need a woman to stave off the toxicity, and she did great there. So
yeah, I mean, 100%, she fucking killed it. Like,
Yeah.
I have on her end, I have absolutely no criticisms for her. Like, this was an insanely well done movie,
especially with the story you shared, like with the rando about like how she walked away but still kind of was working on it, how she really pushed her bail because she knew he would be the perfect person for that role. I mean, like, the movie, I mean, if they had kept the first director, even if it would have sucked so much, if things worked out where their first plan worked out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you got to wonder where Oliver Stone would have taken this, because they knew they were going to have to increase the budget. They were going to try to get an additional $40 million.
Oh my god!
And you
to
know,
do
maybe
with Oliver Stone.
Maybe it would have been fine because we know now, especially in the future, Leonardo DiCaprio is a great actor, so he could, and it probably would have tanked his career.
Great at one thing.
So, but like, but it is weird to think like I don't think he would have done as well as Christian Bale.
I don't either.
Especially
at the time, because of what he had done. Maybe if this was post Shutter Island and post Inception and post Wolf of Wall Street, he might have had a chance. But I do not think 1999 Leo would have done anything good in this movie.
Yeah.
He doesn't even look the same anymore as he did.
No. He was still so baby-faced. And Christian Bale was just baby-faced enough that you could believe he was 27, but wasn't like a child like Leo was. So no, I think he would have been terrible in that.
No, she did great as a director.
Yeah.
Yeah, I give it the same, and I think not it's what you said with the rando, right? Like her going to bat so hard for Bale, but I also think you know, she could have very well just been a throwaway director that was hired because they needed a female, because if they hired a male, there's no way they could release this film given the pressure they were receiving. But she came in and she had a vision. And she really, and her relationship with Guinevere Turner, the writer, I think they really picked out and really, they created some visuals that were very memorable. Yeah. And they kind of like took a risk on Bale, even though it's really cool that she went to bat for him. She also was taking a risk with him, and it paid off. And in a lot of ways, she let him work. She let him do his thing, stayed out of his way. She talks about that in the commentary, and really, like, I think she saw something, and I think we could probably, if you love Christian Bale, I don't think you can say I love Christian Bale without saying thanks, Mary Harron.
Yeah, legitimately.
Yeah, so I mean, you get and it's a performance today that people still post about and still talk about a lot.
There's an entire Instagram account that just posts him doing the workout routine as like Patrick Bateman, like confidence, basically.
That's amazing. Get that energy. Get that serial
killer.
Yeah.
Nice, good.
Yeah.
Great mind.
It's like that motivational poster kind of thing.
That's amazing. Oh man, I need to work out to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. There you go.
That's amazing.
We're not saying you should become a serial killer, listeners.
But if
we're
you
saying
do,
you should work
but if you want to
out
look like one.
But if you want, work out like one.
Yeah.
Work out like someone else's life depends on you.
You know what Ed Gein said? That part kills me. What does he say? I don't know if I want to take her out to dinner or put her head on a stick. What's amazing is Ed Gein is the inspiration for every slasher. Yeah. Basically, like it's amazing. All right, it's looks like it is 4-0. We're almost done here. I mean, I knew this would probably be be a positive film. All right, and this is what this is one of your categories. What's in front of us? This includes cinematography, production, design, sound, costume, just those elements.
The general look of the film, and it's like, there's so many freaking little details. This is every bit as detailed as a Kubrick film, in my opinion. Like literally everything in front of the camera was so well thought out, because like you go from the stark white of his apartment and then you end up in Paul Allen's apartment and it's all these beautiful greens, and he's even mad because he knows it's more expensive than his. Like they paid attention to the tiny details of what that kind of multimillionaire billionaire culture would look like, what it would look like if you had a more expensive apartment overlooking the park. Like, no, she put, I mean, not just she, every single person on this film who had to do with anything in front of the camera did an incredible job. The cinematography, the way the shots were set up, and the intentionality of the movements and the framing, like everything was just beautifully thought out. So 100%, it's got a one of art.
I love that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's one of those, I don't know as much about filmmaking and putting things together, but like when I'm watching it, I'm like, everything here is believable. Yeah. It's brought me into its universe. I mean, as we were reviewing the Crow series, the first couple movies, we were like, what we're watching, we could clearly tell the movies where the setting, the set pieces, the costumes, it was further bringing us into the world of the movie. And then we also had the movies where we were like, why is it a Western?
Yeah.
This takes me away from the story it's telling. But this movie, they were very well put together with, so give it all the watermarks.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think, and one really interesting note here is that the cinematographer was Andrei Sekula, who did Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Which, that was interesting because I didn't know, I've seen this movie so many times, but I didn't know that till this time around because of watching the commentary. And there's one of the best, and I always think about cinematography in the form of images, like stills. Like, this is great camera work, but if you were just to say freeze, and there's these beautiful, and the one that to me is when he's going to meet before he meets his lawyer, and he's in his closet picking out the suits. That image, like the lighting, the darkness, and like all the suits, and like the backdrop is fluorescent, but he's in the darkness. To me, I was like, boom, there it is. Every movie I'm looking for images, and that one stuck out to me. And once I found out it was the guy that did Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, it made sense because those movies are so raw.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of color editing or anything. It's very raw, but he's very great with just like kind of, I don't know how you call it, the framework.
The framing,
Yeah, the framing is just so like specific, and I'm trying to think of another scene. Oh, I just think the fact that this is a $6 million movie.
Yeah.
And it's a time period piece.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing an 80s movie.
In 2000, like,
Yeah, and that's a costly decision.
Yeah.
and they didn't have enough money to really make it look, because they didn't like have a lot. You didn't see a lot of vehicles, and there's a lot of things they couldn't show you. The only thing that really did feel like 80s that they spent money on was the food. Like
the
it was
food
like,
and the costumes.
Yeah.
The suits were very 80s. The coats everybody was wearing, and the hairstyles.
Yeah. And those were definitely like 80s power lunch restaurants. Like a good, like the great visual representation of everything was so limited in budget, but they made great choices to live within that $6 million.
Yeah.
I feel like even in watching everything, they did kind of have a less, just like with the acting and the storytelling, the less is more. Like they probably were very intentional with what they did to make it look 80s, but they also probably didn't think we have to cover everything. They were like with what they're filming, they're like, if we just film in a couple buildings and in these certain things, we don't have to afford all this other stuff, because they were, they didn't, in grand scheme of things, they weren't using a ton of money there.
I don't know. In my opinion, I think the costume designers and the set designers, like the production designers, killed themselves to get every little detail right.
Yeah.
It's one of those, you could take any frame from that movie with a lot of stuff going on, and you're not going to find one single thing out of place.
Yeah.
You're not going to be like, oh, that telephone was actually a wireless telephone that was made in like the 2000s. Yeah. Every little freaking detail, even down to like, I'm sure like the club bathrooms they were in just felt like the 80s. So now I personally think there was like significant thought put into every frame and every set
it's
piece.
not that I wasn't saying that they didn't put all the thought into it. I'm saying that they knew how to do it in a way where they didn't need a ton of things. Like,
yes, it'd be
interesting to see how many places they filmed at. They probably were very intentional about using a few places that they could dress differently.
It seemed, if I remember correctly, there's only like 20 or 30 locations.
Yeah.
Because they keep going
the clubs,
back to a lot of places.
The apartment buildings, the offices. Yeah. And the restaurants.
Yeah.
Those clubs annoyed the piss out of me, by the way. I would never want, and not like I was mad at the movie, but I was just like, that's a place I would never want to be.
I hate everyone who's there.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
Absolutely.
And actually, I guess this is also a testament to, we're saying that I'm feeling like we're saying this gets a watermark.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
I didn't know when I watched this movie, I didn't pick up that it was filmed in 2000. I thought it was older because of what I was looking at.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was a choice they made to keep it in the 80s, and some of that was the Reaganomics that drove the yuppieism of that era. So that's kind of what why they focused on that. But all right, it even has a watermark 5-0. You're killing me. The kills.
Yeah.
How we rate? Now I want to put this. I had to change that from I hate the poetic killings thing because it was crow related. I'm just so fucking over the crow. But you're killing me. The kills. Now I do want to put this in light. Like this was marketed almost as a slasher.
Yeah.
A lot of people came in to see it. So whether you want to judge it for what it is or with the idea that it was almost sold as a slasher movie.
Yeah.
So take that as you will.
I mean, I think it was so well done.
Mm-hmm.
As we were saying earlier, like the fact that they didn't go over the top until they really needed to, which to me, the only genuine over the top moment was when he's going down on the girl and just starts eating her.
Yeah.
Like physically eating her. That to me was like the moment that I was like, what the actual
Thank you for not showing it too.
Yes.
Yeah. Dear God.
But it was like so wild and over the top, but it was still so understated. Like it wasn't something crazy like it could.
I'm so glad they understated. And I feel like people who were really into the book probably would have watched that and be like, man, if you knew the rest of what he was doing. Then...
Oh yeah.
But it's one of those where it's like even down to him killing Jared Leto, like that scene has become so iconic because of how much they left up to your imagination. They didn't try to go, because I literally right after watching American Psycho, my roommate and I watched Friday the 13th, and I'd never seen it before. And it's like they could have gone that over the top with axes physically in people's faces and all the crazy gore and shit, but they didn't. They made like very conscious decisions to keep it as understated as possible. So watermarks all the way.
I enjoyed it. I'll give it a watermark for myself. Like I thought like the chainsaw killing was my favorite.
Yeah.
The axe one, I mean that was iconic. I mean like even I've seen other things do that because of that scene. I've seen that same movie scene in other movies because of this movie.
Yeah.
And then of course there's like the weird, like the opening the fridge and wasn't there like a head and there's all kinds of. I'm wondering. I'm not really a slasher film person though. I don't enjoy them. I don't go out to watch them. So I'm wondering if a slasher fan would watch this, if they were to go into here being like, man, I can't wait to see this slasher movie, if they would think it was like almost not enough. Because I think the appeal of this movie was the psychological
Yeah.
terror in it, you know?
I think they wouldn't like it. Like
that
I
was
think,
Yeah. So I feel comfortable for me giving a watermark for my own preferences, but I also realize it's like asking an Amish person their opinions on like
the new iPhone.
gangster rap. So
Yeah.
But
What do
yeah,
you think of the new iMessage?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
butter.
yeah.
I'm sure they've all heard Amish Paradise. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great song.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the issue was. It's weak reception. A lot of people showed up thinking it was a slasher and were disappointed when it wasn't. Some people didn't know what to expect and they didn't pick up on the jokes.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of confusion about what this movie was. But I do give it the watermark here. I think they're interesting. It's just enough. I don't think they did it. There's so much in the book that was so over the top and so grotesque. Like there's one part where he's like towards the end when he's stewing heads in a pot and eating brains, and he's when he alludes to eating brains in the movie, like that was happening at a wide scale in the book.
Or maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, or maybe it wasn't. And there was a part in the book where there's just bodies everywhere, and like he's having to like step over body parts, and he's just like he's created this layer of dead body. Like it's just they focused on the right things here to make this appealing on screen, and I think the kills are a big part of that. So yeah, again, I don't watch this movie because of the kills, and I think they serve a good purpose because they're what you said, they're enhancing the psychological elements.
So maybe if there was another category that was like marketing of the movie, we would give it a not watermark because the people were going into it expecting one thing and they got something different.
And that at that point, you blame the executives in the studios because once the movie's done, it's out of the director's hand. They have no control over the previews, no control over the marketing. So
yeah, and they knew they were in uncharted water anyway. I mean, they knew they were marketing a movie based on a book that had created so much division. Yeah, it was at the time was one of the most controversial books ever written.
This is an indie plot. This is not like this would no major anything would be like this seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
But that's
Which is why it's great.
That's why we have indie filmmakers and indie books is because there are still some great stories that just maybe the mainstream people
aren't
won't
ready
do.
for.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Love it. All right, so this is kind of a creative, timely category, given the reason we ended up doing this. It's 6-0. This category is called "Give It the Boot." Now, stick with me because there's a little bit of reverse psychology in answering this. So, this is the idea: should this movie be remade? But if you say yes, then that's a negative because that means they didn't deliver on it, and it should be remade because they didn't tell the story. If you say no, that's actually affirmative because you feel like, given what you know, I know you're not going to read the book, but given on what I've told you and the controversy, that they told the best story they possibly could. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I don't know if in this answer, it's like I don't know if I'm passionate enough about this particular movie and book to really have a strong opinion on it. But my first thought is I don't think they need to make a remake for it. I think the story that they told might hopefully, I would think, again, I don't know because I'm not going to read the book, but I would think that the essence of what the book was about, the message it was trying to send across to the story that it was telling, while a lot more graphic, a lot more gory, a lot more going on, but I mean, they had a lot more space with words and you can make it longer. I feel like, based off of what people have told me, the essence of the story is the same in both.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, I don't think they need to do a remake because, and then part of me, because A, I don't think they'll do it any better. B, I am so tired of reboots.
Yeah.
Because more often than not, with the reference being The Crow 2024, the reboots are not good. And I feel like we're in a state with movies right now where we need less reboots and more original stories.
Agreed.
So what's the opposite of the watermark?
So you would say no, so it has a watermark because it was you feel like what was done. Sorry, it's a little confusing.
I feel like if you sat down and you were like, what's the most complicated way of creating this category?
Because I was thinking when I made the category, I was like, well, if they say no, that would be considered a negative, but it's not negative because you're saying they did a damn good job. So I was like, I had to.
So I'm going to give it a watermark. Give the boot the boot.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
I agree. Give it the watermark. It again, I haven't read the book. I'm not going to read the book, but I don't think. Maybe the only change you could make is having the weird like glitches in the Matrix that happen a little sooner. But even then, I don't think that's necessary. I think this movie is so iconic. Like, you should be rebooting movies that were not good. You should not be rebooting a movie that is so iconic in its particular imagery and try to do it different. Like, why? Why are we doing this? So no, there should be no reboot.
I do think the only reason someone would want to reboot is if they were like, I want it to be a slasher movie.
Yeah.
Like, slasher fans would be like, give me something more slashy.
Yeah, but even then, I'm just like, this. Again, I feel like it's too iconic. It would literally be like if they were gonna try to remake Fight Club. Like, Fight Club's imagery is so specific and iconic that to remake that is just needless. Like, why are we taking something that's already great and turning it into something that could only be as great?
Right.
It can never get better. So no, should not be remade. Give it the watermark.
Yeah, I totally agree. You actually said kind of something I was thinking, but you said it in a much better way. My thinking is, if I've learned anything doing this podcast, it's that films that face a lot of adversity, have a lot of limitations, are always really great. Not always, but
a lot of times.
Movies like Jaws, the sharks never works.
Yeah.
So it turns out that actually not showing the shark a lot benefited the movie.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. This movie was made on $6 million. It doesn't look or feel like a $6 million movie. They made incredible choices. They adapted it the right way. I think they made the right choices when adapting the book. And The Crow 2024 is a great example. Adding more money to it does not mean it's going to be better.
Yeah.
And in my experience, it's never like the Point Break movie.
Yeah.
Like, Point Break is like, I've talked to you about it.
Yeah.
That's like my 10th favorite movie of all time.
Nice.
That remake was it was insulting.
Yeah.
Because there is a Point Break crew out there.
Oh,
there's just like The Crow.
Yeah.
There's a group of us out there that are obsessed with that movie still to this day.
Yeah.
Adding more money and more
Those people
effects.
should turn into the second season, episode 1 of my podcast.
Yeah.
When we review Point Break.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be there for it, baby.
There you go.
But you just, oh God, when you remove the restraints, it makes them. I think, especially in today, where one of my biggest issues with modern filmmaking, like straight to streaming movies, is they have a really hard time closing the deal.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed it. I would love your perspective because you're in filmmaking, but like, I've seen so many Netflix movies that start off really good, and then about 60% of the way in, it loses its pace, or the ending is bad, or I've lost interest. Like, I just find they don't know how to close the deal.
Right.
Yeah. They have a lot of great concepts and they put all the work into the concept, but then once they get the deal, they're like, all right, you've got this amount of time to get ready to go.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, whether the script was done or not, they tend to pick these cool movies that'll look cool, but they don't really care about the final act as much. And that's definitely been a trend recently.
Yeah, and that's so well said. And just because they're getting more money to make it doesn't mean they're spending it on the right things. Like The Crow 2024, when you find out they're doing a lot of the scenes in that LED thing, like, it's cool and it looks pretty cool, but it's also like, you got more money, but you still did the cheapest thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a testament to just entertainment culture in general.
Yeah. And there's two really quick examples before we close up. Like, we actually had, speaking of viral, we had a piece of content go viral where you were talking about how that was a slap in the face of Crow fans.
Yeah.
That where they aimed it at Gen Zers. And I was like, and that point was so poignant because I was like, as a fan, again, it's just a movie.
Yeah.
But we obviously kind of like movies in this room a little bit.
Yeah.
It was kind of a punch in the gut. It's like, oh, like, you weren't even thinking about me.
Yeah.
The guy that's obsessed with The Crow.
Yeah.
Like, so you didn't even care. So this really was either just a cash grab or you actually didn't care about the old fans.
Yeah.
That sucks. And then I interviewed Peter Iliff, who wrote Point Break. He shat on that remake. And he actually, you go listen to it. I have an interview with Peter Iliff. He's amazing. He wrote Point Break, Varsity Blues, Patriot Games, incredible writer. And he was talking about, he was like, I asked him about his name being attached to it. He's like, well, they had to put my name on it because I wrote the original one. He's like, but trust me, it was dog shit.
Right.
And so I was like, even the people that are, that make the original, like, they also aren't, they're not considering them either.
No.
It's just like, these are truly, like, it's hard to accept that the things that, and maybe it's always been a little bit about cash, but it's progressively with these remakes. These are cash grabs.
100%.
They are not considering how you feel about the original,
No.
and that hurts.
The best positive way they could maybe spin it is like, we're trying to find a new audience for this story.
But even then, you're not gonna give it the longevity it deserves unless you're bringing along the people who made it what it was.
Yeah. That's another thing they're going to have to consider with the American Psycho reboot is like, are they going to make the choice to keep it in the 80s? Or I even had this horrible thought, stupid thought. I was like, oh, God forbid they make this a Silicon Valley story.
Yeah. Oh, no, I had the exact same thought.
You thought that too?
I did.
I was like, God, they're going to make this a Zuckerberg type of person or some somebody that made an app or something. Like, if they do that, I'm out. Not just the movies. I'm out of this planet.
Yeah.
I think that would be hilarious to review in the same way that Wicked Prayer was hilarious. Yeah. Not because I'm like, this was such a great movie.
Yeah.
It would be more, can you believe that someone sat down and thought, let's do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time some actor is playing a rich character and they're just like, oh, I just decided I was going to be, what I think Elon Musk is like.
Yeah.
I'm immediately like, you're going to do a shitty job.
Yeah.
Because you're taking the lazy way out. Mm-hmm. You're taking someone that A, you probably hate, and B, someone who's significantly in the public eye, so who's genuinely different than the rest of the culture. Mm-hmm. You're just taking the lazy way out. So it's probably going to suck if that's what you're trying to base everything on.
At least look at 3 different really rich people.
Yeah.
But don't look at the ones who are on TV all the time.
Yeah.
Mark Cuban does not accurately represent the billionaire who doesn't want to be famous. The guy who doesn't want to be in front of the cameras. Yeah. So it's like, no, I think it's insanely lazy when you just pick the most famous rich person you can think of.
Yeah.
And try to emulate what you see on TV.
Yeah, because so many, it reminds me, you remember Stephen Wright, one of my favorite comedians of all time? He had that amazing joke. He said he's dating this rich girl. Her dad was the guy that designed the diagram that tells you how to put batteries in things.
Yeah.
It's a hilarious joke because it's like all of a sudden you have to remember like, oh yeah, someone had to do that. And that's not a Mark Cuban. That's some guy that's like.
And he became a billionaire off of that.
Yeah. And he's happy that you don't know his name.
Yeah.
So that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We just put the axe in the confession has meant nothing. We didn't even get to use my kitschy title, but 7-0, man. Like this is good stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's a good movie. I mean, this would be a hard one to come up with like things to not like about it.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think about this reboot coming out. I'd be interested to hear about your thoughts. But next week, Seth's taking us through one of his favorite movies.
Absolutely. It's a little Australian movie called Upgrade. So
Boom.
I'm excited to get y'all into it.
Can't wait. Yeah. All right. Thank y'all. Don't kill anybody. Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Movie Wars.